Hi, and welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. We've taken a few days off after having a lot of winter colds and sickness happening in the house. Unbelievable. Connecticut winter killing us this year. We're ready to paint a giant red X on the door and just tell people not to come in unless they have a death wish. But I've got myself together fairly to put together a quick video about making your own pattern using a cookie cutter and scrap. So this will be a scrap pattern for a small rug, and I'm gonna make one, and I'm gonna market it, be selling it in the group with a ton of colorful light and dark dust, colorful worms cut in size 5. So those are coming soon. That's a to be continued. But right now, I just want to show you how I'm doing it in case you don't like my design or you have special cookie cutters that are special to your family. You might want to do something different. So let me see if I can make it through this without expiring. And I'll give you a shot of what I'm looking at down on my table beginning to end. Okay, so here we go with what we're going to need. And I'm going to show you my hands and what I'm doing here rather than this sick face. So all you're going to need is a cookie cutter. Later on, obviously, you're going to need the stripped wool. All I'm doing to start out is I have a piece of white paper that I've already managed to mess up, but if I didn't mess it up 10 times, it wouldn't really be me. You see I made a wrong line here. I want my design to be a square. So all I'm doing here to start is I drew a square on this grid poster paper, and I marked off some key corners and points at intervals using a ruler, knowing, I used a grid, but you use a ruler. Set up a square that has some cues in it so that you can center your piece, and then you'll see what the trick is to making this very geometric and symmetrical. So I've got my piece down, I've got my Sharpie, and I'm just connecting some lines just as a gauge. This isn't part of the design, but I'm connecting them as a gauge so that when I place my design on top, I'll have everything very symmetrical. So right now what I've got is a poster. This is a bit shiny, this paper. I've got sort of a framed white piece of paper with enough information on it that I'll be able to lay my piece down. So now what I'm going to do is take a piece of tracing paper and just laying it over my white paper. And now I'm just tracing the frame. Now you can tidy all this up later. It doesn't need to be perfect right now. I always do messy lines, but the main thing is I have the shape of the thing and I can play with it later. So I'm literally just, with a Sharpie that's about to run out, like all my Sharpies, just tracing the information on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my cookie cutter. I happen to get this one at an antique store. But obviously they're at Goodwill, they're online, they're everywhere. It's a copper cat. I just had to have it. I thought it was so cute. Thought we'd have a copper cat party, and my I just saw it's from Cape Cod. My kids would each do some cats. Thought that could be fun. So what I'm going to do next is place this on here, pretty centered. And I can make it pretty centered because now I've drawn a square on here. I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to stand up, and obviously a scrap piece, whether we're talking about a quilt or a hooked rug, does not have to be perfect. The nature of the thing is that it's a bit naive. It's a bit folky. It's not perfect. Don't go crazy with being perfect, or it will look too perfect and backfire. So what I'm going to do now is just trace my cat onto here, onto my tracing paper, and I still have my white paper under it, although that's not essential. I have to see if this works well. When you're tracing something with a big dull marker, it has potential to not look as pretty as I want it to. Let's see what we've got. That's quite pretty. That looks just like our cat. So what I've got now is the shape of the cat on the tracing paper inside my square. And so far that's all I need. So what I'm going to do now, because this is a scrap quilt, it's a scrap rug, Dayquil not helping, I'm going to now just do a random design in the background. So what I'm going to do is fold this in half like this. I'm going to get rid of this now, flip it over, so the extra lines are not messing with me. I don't need any more speed bumps or challenges when I'm not feeling well. So I'm folding it right in half. My square is now half and half. So what I'm going to do next is start to trace lines around him. You know, I'm going to do corners first. I take it back. I'm going to do corners first. So I think I'm going to do something like this, just freestyling it. I'm going to do a thingy in the corner, and I'm going to just go out in sort of rays, like little rainbows of sunlight or color, and it's very uneven, just like you would expect with a folk piece. And then I just did this kind of corner thing, freehand, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, so that at least the corners, as imperfect and folky and naive as they are, at least they match. Because there will be plenty of things about this piece that won't match. So now I've got it on both sides. Now I'm going to fold the tracing paper again and bring the corners up here. So now we've got the thing in quarters. So now I'm going to trace the last 2 quarters. To be sure we're even. I think the last one's going to be hiding here. So find your 4 corners and just trace. Uh-oh. Kleenex break. All right. And just do some tracing like this. Now, you're picturing as you go, as anybody would be, who's a rug hooker and loves color, all your nice fabrics, all the ways that you're going to color this and add different worms in and noodles in different places, and how lovely and colorful it's going to be. So when I put this kit together, the cat is going to be dark colors, dark browns, dark navies, black, dark greens. That's about it. Dark grays, dark colors. And then I'll give you scraps for everywhere else. And it will be up to you if you want to darken the corners, lighten the corners, put patterns, more patterns that I have throughout, do a lot of variety and variation. It's up to you. It's always going to be your piece when you get a pattern, even as a kit. It is still your piece. Because there's so much play in every design, particularly a scrap design. So now I've got my cat with the 4 corners, and I'm just literally gonna trace around him like this, freehand. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, nor should it be perfect. Life is not perfect. We are not perfect. I have yet to find one person in this whole world who is perfect. And none of my designs are perfect, and it's kind of nice when they're not. I can accept it and make them pop because of their differentness. So I'm just going around in rays. I'm not going to fold the paper in half because, of course, the cat is not symmetrical. So I'm just adding line after line, rows after rows, filling out around the cat. And if you want it more perfect than mine is, then you should take some time and do it just the way you like it. You might have at this point already a vision for your colors. Maybe it's very monochromatic. Maybe it's very light and dark, very stark. Or maybe you're going to do the kit and do a good mix of things and hand-dyed things, colors. So as you can see, I'm just going round and round and adding lines in everywhere. And of course, these lines that are radiating from the central design, which should be dark or light, either reverse it, light to dark or dark to light. But all of these lines radiating from the center are, of course, going to accentuate the central design, and that's what you want. Even in a folk piece, maybe especially in a folk piece, you want to be sure that there is a center of interest to anchor your design. That's what's going to make a good design. There's so much you can read, and I will do videos on books that help, that are particularly strong on one subject for reading. I've been reading a lot of books about setting up your design and making a T design versus an X design versus an S design, where the heaviness is. With something like this is a scrap design. So we are just working with a basic, your eye goes to the center and everything else is bling and window dressing. So what I've got here, let's see if I can do this so I can help more, is my cat on this tracing paper with lots of designs radiating from it. It reminds me a lot of Magdalena Abbey, who did a lot of these folk designs. Now, because we know that I just did this by starting with these corner pieces, for me, I would do something with the corners first, because making a good stable frame around a busy piece, especially because if you're getting the kit, you're going to have a lot of color changing worms in it. So there will be a lot of action no matter what you choose to go where. It's a good thing to have a good solid center, the cat, and the four corners being solid. And if you get the four corners the same, which I think is important to keeping the design tight, up to you, but I would do, if you're doing it dark, do it dark. If you're doing it light, do it light, but I would do those four corners the same. And so what you do in the center with all the lines radiating from the cat is going to make your design, number one, unique, and it's going to make it also successful, which is a big part of it, of course. People, you know, if you're a quilter like I am also, people talk about hit or miss quilts. Just putting colors together, patterns together, pieces together, and hoping for the best, hoping it's successful. I personally feel like with rug design and rug patterns and hooking, I feel like there's less of a hit or miss factor, because I just think more often than not, the colors blend and you have harmony and beauty. I just think there's something about the wool, the way that it ends up looking no matter what you do, that you rarely can make a mistake. So working on a scrap quilt and starting with a scrap quilt is a nice, easy way to use up some of your worms. If you're doing our monthly kits in our group and you've already had your January mittens done, you're going to have a lot of leftover worms from that. So you can also put those toward this if you like those colors. It came with a lot of the metallic colors. You could put those in this too. Do it however you want to do it. But this was just an idea that I wanted to give you, because I have been thinking about cookie cutters. Now that Christmas is over, I couldn't find my Christmas ones, but it's just as well because I found Kitty Cat. But it just is a nice, easy pattern to do, and really the only thing that you need is the cookie cutter, a Sharpie, or even a pencil. Of course, you will need to transfer it eventually, and I will do a video on transferring too, because I do transferring with tulle, the material tulle, Tulle, or mesh netting, whatever you want to call it. So all you will need is a cookie cutter, tracing paper. If you want it really symmetrical, you can do foldovers. If you were using, for example, a gingerbread man or something like that, you know, rather than something super lumpy like a cat, you would have a symmetrical gingerbread man, and then you could fold it in half and do your lines radiating in half too. I couldn't do that because he wasn't equal side to side. But if you choose something that is, that would also be a nice design. It would be maybe even stronger and less busy because it was symmetrical all the way around. So see how it goes, and write a comment if you have any questions about this technique. But very easy getting going on patterns. You can always freehand, you can always just trace and freehand the rest of it. But I'm just showing you what a very basic beginning is if you want to start a scrap pattern like this one. Look for these. They'll be coming up with kits, lots of colors, leftover scraps I have of hand-dyed fabrics, and maybe that'll be fun for you too. I'm going to work on mine in the meantime. We'll see you next time.